Hi, it's Joe Slack from the Board Game Design course. And today on Behind the Design, we're going to take a closer, in-depth look at Michael Kiesling's game, Azul, produced by Next Move Games. We're going to have a look at the mechanics in the game, as well as some of the game design choices. So without further ado, let's jump into Azul. One of the things I wanted to talk about before we even jump into the game design and mechanics of Azul would be the components. As you can see, there's a nicely printed bag. There are these nice thick chunky tiles that really kind of snap and make a sound when you place them, and the good quality boards. So you can see these high quality components really make for a good quality game. Now, these are more from a publisher perspective than a designer perspective, but still it can make your game really appeal to players more and allow you to charge a higher price point as well, because it is such a premium game with premium components. Now let's have a look at the game itself. So you'll see there's a board. Everybody gets one of these player boards in Azul, which has various different colors in rows and columns, and a scoreboard track on here as well. This is the starting board, but you'll also notice if you flip over the board, there is a second side. And this adds more variability to the game and more replay value. So whereas you might start on the beginner board on the other side, once you've played a little bit more, then you can start playing on this board, which is a little more challenging. Maybe not expert mode, but it does give a little bit of variability. And then you can always switch back to the original board when you're teaching new players the game. You'll keep score using this block on a track here, so everybody's got their individual scores. During the game, all you're doing is taking tiles from one coaster or another and placing them somewhere on your board to fill out the different spots on your own individual board. But what happens, what's really interesting, is when you take a certain color or a certain type of tile, all the rest on that coaster will be pushed to the center. So for example, if I take the two yellow tiles, the two black tiles will be pushed towards the center. And now I'm left with a choice. At the start of the game, you have every spot open, but as the game goes on, you'll start filling up your board. I have to choose where I want to place these. I can take the safe move of placing them in that row and completing that row, and at the end of the round, it will automatically score on here and be placed onto my main board. Or I could take something more risky, like trying the row of 5, for example, and I have to hope that I'm going to be able to fill in this row of 5 before the end of the round. Otherwise, these tiles will continue on to the next round and stay on my board. What also makes this interesting choice is that once you push some tiles into the center and take some for your own, and this is the next player's turn, they have to choose whether they want to continue to pick from one of the other coasters, which they have a choice of, or they can take from the center. Now, as more players pick from the outside, more and more tiles will be pushed into the center, which can make for some large combinations of one type of tile. But the downside, when one player decides to be the first one to take tiles from the center, is that they will also take the first player token. That'll be placed in the bottom row and it'll be worth -1 point at the end of the round. So you're taking a penalty for the benefit of being able to choose first in the next round. As you can see as well, with the distribution of coasters here, we're set up for a 2-player game with 5 coasters, you'll see that there's a different distribution. You have some tiles with 1 of each different type, some with 2, you might even see some with 3 or 4 of one type. So having that first player choice can be very, very important because you can snatch up that set of tiles with the most pieces. As I mentioned, after the end of the round, you're going to score any rows that are complete, but any that are incomplete will be carried over. So as a player, you have to make some tough choices about whether or not you want to go for some of the larger rows that you may or may not be able to complete that round. You'll also have to make some hard choices about which colors to go for. For example, you have many more black tiles in this configuration right now, so you might be thinking about going for these and trying to fill in as many of your rows as possible. Because there are different ways to score in the game. You score whenever you place tiles, but also in different combinations for every row, column, and 5 of a kind. So for example, if you had all 5 of your yellow spots filled, you'd get a bonus of 10 points, which is quite a considerable score in this game. So you have to make some choices about this, because at first, maybe there's a lot of these black tiles, but if you don't get a lot of them, there's going to be less in the bag afterwards, because there's an even distribution of all the tiles in the game. So it makes for some really interesting choices in the game as to which tiles you're going to take, where you're going to place them, and what you want to do throughout the course of the game. As you can see, the mechanics of the game are very simple, but they lead to very interesting choices, and that's why Azul has become such a popular game. You'll see that the choices made in the game are not difficult, so the designer has made it fairly easy for you to make a choice without taking a lot of time. There's only between 5 and 7 coasters available, depending on the number of players, as mentioned, and only 4 tiles on each coaster. And then once more get pushed to the center, there can be more available. But it's a very easy concept of taking all the tiles of one color, placing them on the board, and pushing them towards the center. This is a little different than a lot of other games where you just take one thing and then maybe something would be available for other players. Instead, everything getting pushed to the center makes for more meaningful choices and the possible penalty with the first player token. But after somebody's taken that first player token, then you can take from the center freely. So as these begin to pile up, they might become more valuable and players will take from here. The only problem is when you go over in a row, for example, you've completed this row of 3, but you took 4 at once, you have to move this one down into the bottom row, which is going to be minuses. So you have to make a tough choice. Do you want to complete that third row, which might be important to you, and take a penalty, or maybe push it into the 4th row when you take them and play it more safe? And whenever you have to take another color, when you don't have any space left on your board, it's automatically going to go down here. So there's also some hate drafting allowed, because you can take tiles not necessarily that are best for you, but will mess up the next player after you as well. This has been Behind the Design of Azul. If you're interested in other resources to help you make your own board game, check out the 10-minute board game design blueprint at the link below. Thanks a lot.